just to begin with a scripture passage from the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed the call to set out for a country that was the inheritance given to him and his descendants, and that he set out without knowing where he was going. By faith he arrived as a foreigner in the promised land and lived there as if in a strange country, with Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. They lived there in tents, while he looked forward to a city founded, designed, and built by God. I think that passage encapsulates much of the Christian sense of pilgrimage. The word pilgrimage, as you well know, from the Latin peregrinum, which literally means wandering over a distance, and largely without purpose. We as Christians believe there is a purpose. It's again summed up in this short passage, that we look forward to a city founded, designed, and built by God. And so for us as Christians, we go back right to the beginning of sacred scripture, the very first passages of scripture, really, and just to understand the need for moving out of ourselves with discipline, with reliance, with faith, relying. I think this brings in the whole point of pilgrimage and dependency. I think as St. John of the Cross says, one of the great Catholic mystics, in order to go to a place we do not know, we have to pass through places we do not know. And I think that is so much of the journey of pilgrimage. Just looking a brief introduction here, and then we'll go to the movie, and then I can say a few more specific words about Assisi. But right at the beginning of scripture, obviously, there is a need for us to move out of ourselves. We know this from the fall, where Adam and Eve separate themselves, first of all, from God, and that has consequences then on human relationships. Cain kills his brother Abel, and then gradually there is this complete fall of the whole of humanity, going through the flood, and then eventually to the Tower of Babel. Let us build our own city, they say, build our own city. So we're no longer looking forward to a city built by God, but let us build our own city. Let us make a name for ourselves. So this complete falling into humanity decays until God chooses one man to make this journey, to come out of his hopelessness, to go forward, depending on God. And that figure, as we well know, is Abraham, whom we as Christians consider our father in faith. And it's just fascinating when God calls him. I think this is so much of pilgrimage. Very often now we organize pilgrimages, it's all planned for us, but I think much of the original sense of pilgrimage, when we look back thousands of years ago, even in the Middle Ages, we didn't know where we were going. We didn't have a specific road map. We really relied on providence, often with the help of others, of elders, of guides. There was that real sense of abandoning ourselves. I think that's really important, abandoning ourselves. And I think this is really important. I saw one of the comments there, the importance of suffering. Yeah, there is a suffering coming out of ourselves, out of our own comfort zone, leaving our own securities, but then discovering, also through failures, through difficulties, through sufferings, through not knowing where I'm going, that all of this is part of the pilgrimage, and part of offering up that suffering others, for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of others. And we know this very specifically through Abraham, that when God calls Abraham, Abraham is an old man and really hopeless. He's always wanted a child. He's always wanted a land, and he's 75 years old. His wife, Sarah, is sterile. But God calls him in Ur of Chaldea to begin this journey, to begin simply walking, not knowing where he was going. And for a long time, and Abraham did that. Abraham did that. The scripture tells us he hoped against all hope. But he was moving towards something. I think that's really key for pilgrimage. He was moving towards something. He didn't know what it was, and very often a pilgrimage, we do not know what awaits us. But he knew it would be good. It would be good. And along this journey, there was a long time that God didn't seem to be fulfilling his promises. He was silent. I think that's so much a pilgrimage as well. We simply don't know where we're going to sleep that night. So when I think of the pilgrimage, for example, Santiago and Compostela, some of the Franciscan routes, we don't know where we're going to lay our head that night. And that's part of the suffering, but part of the adventure as well, because we really see that God provides in amazing, spectacular, and even greater ways than we could have ever imagined. And that really comes to strengthen our faith and makes us witnesses to others as well. And along that journey, I think this is really important about pilgrimage as well, in the Christian sense. Along that journey, Abraham really messes up. He doesn't see the promises fulfilled, and so he tries to work it out for himself by having a child with the maidservant Hagar. When he goes down to Egypt, and he says, his wife is his sister, gets himself in all sorts of trouble. And then God comes in the midst of all this failure, we can say, and relying on himself to renew again. Keep going. Have courage. The promise still stands. You're going to reach that homeland. And we know he makes a covenant with him and says, look at the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants are going to be as numerous as this. And amazingly, as part of this pilgrimage that Abraham makes, on that very hot day when he's in his tent, and these three visitors come, and he recognizes them as the presence of God and completely gives of himself, totally. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Also, in pilgrimage, we're called to look out for my brother. When we go in groups of pilgrimages, there's often someone who's tired or sick, and we've got to keep up with their pace. We've got to look out for the one who is weaker, the one who is less able, provide for them. It's just something very, very fantastic. That's what Abraham does with these three visitors, gives completely of himself, and is not left disappointed. They say, this time next year, your wife will have a child. And as we know, the promise is fulfilled. And Abraham ends his day with a land and with a son. And so the promises of God are fulfilled. It's an experience then that marks not only his life, but the life of countless generations, this walking